goodness, did you hear that? What is that? Where's that noise coming from? Can you hear that as well? Can you hear that? What does it sound like? Let's listen. What's it sound like? What does it sound like? Where's it coming from? You're right, it's a dinosaur, isn't it? Oh my goodness, well I hope they're not in your house, and I certainly hope they're not in my house either. But in fact, those noises actually relate to the book that we're going to be learning about today. Does anyone know what this story is called? The story which we are going to be reading is called Tyrannosaurus Drip. How many words does Tyrannosaurus Drip have? How many words does our title have? You're right, it's 2, because we have Tyrannosaurus 1, Drip 2. Well done. And who do we think wrote this book? Well done for remembering. It's Julia Donaldson. What is she also known as? Not the person, if they write the story, what are they called? The author. Yeah, well done. And then we've got a bit of a different illustrator. Someone else has drawn the pictures. And that person is called David Roberts. David Roberts is the illustrator. Would you like to read the story with me? Give me a thumbs up if you'd like to. Super, right. So, Tyrannosaurus Drip by Julia Donaldson. In a swamp beside a river where the land was thick with veg, lived a herd of duck-billed dinosaurs who roamed the water's edge. And they hooted up with the rivers, and they hooted up with the reeds, and they hooted up with the bellyfuls of juicy water weeds. Now, across the rushy river, on a hill the other side, lived a mean Tyrannosaurus with his grim and grisly bride. And they shouted up with the hunting, and they shouted up with the war, and they shouted up with the bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaur. But the two Tyrannosauruses, so grisly and grim, couldn't catch the duck-billed dinosaurs because they couldn't swim. And they muttered down with the water, and they muttered down with the wet, and they muttered, what a shame that bridges aren't invented yet. Why do they wish that bridges were invented? Why? Why would a bridge help them? Yeah, exactly, because if they had a bridge, they'd just be able to walk over the river. So then they would be able to get to the duck-billed dinosaurs. Well done. Now, a little competitiveness, but for short, we'll call her Comp, because it's a bit of a tricky word, isn't it? Found a duck-bill egg and stole it from a nest beside the swamp. And she swam with it, and ran with it, and murmured, clever me. And won't the baby Comps be thrilled with duck-bill egg for... I wonder what's got it. Tea! She dropped the egg in terror and went running for her life from the mean Tyrannosaurus and his grim and grisly wife. And the duck-bill egg went rolling, and at last it came to rest in all of unlikely places, the Tyrannosaurus nest. Now the mother T had great big jaws and great enormous legs, but her brain was rather little, and she couldn't count her eggs. And she sang, hatch out my terrors with your scaly little tails, and your spiky little toothies, and your scary little nails. Out hatched babies, 1 and 2, as perfect as could be. But Mother T was horrified by baby number 3. And she grumbled, "He looks weedy." And she grumbled, "He looks weak." And she grumbled, "What long arms, and look, his mouth is like a beak." "He just needs feeding up," said Dad, and gave his baby some meat. The first 2 gulped and guzzled, but the third refused to eat. And he said, "I'm really sorry." And he said, "I simply can't." And he said, this meat looks horrible. I'd rather eat a plant." "A plant?" yelled Mum in horror, and Dad shouted, "Greta Grip." His sisters found a name for him, Tyrannosaurus Drip. That's not very nice, is it? And they shouted, "Up with hunting!" And they shouted, "Up with war!" And they shouted, "Up with bellyfuls of duckbill dinosaur." Poor Tyrannosaurus Drip tried hard to sing along, but the others yelled, "You silly Drip, you've got the words all wrong." For he hooted, "Down with hunting!" And he hooted, "Down with war!" And he hooted, "Down with bellyfuls of duckbill dinosaur!" Drip's sisters grew big enough to hunt with Dad and Mum. But they turned on Drip and told him, "You're not fierce enough to come." And he cried, "They've gone without me." And he cried, "Alack a day." And he cried, "This doesn't feel like home. I'm going to run away." Right, I'm going to leave it there. Are the Tyrannosauruses being very nice to Drip? No, they're not. Why not? Yeah, exactly, because they're not treating him very nicely. We wouldn't talk to other people like that, would we? No, we need to make sure that we're being kind, and they're not being very kind, are they? Right, well, what I would like you to do at the moment is have a think about what's happened in the story so far. So we know that, in fact, instead of saying right now, I want you to have a think in your head. What do you know has happened so far? I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to imagine the story in my head. And I'm going to think about what happened at the beginning. And I'm going to think about now what's happened just now. Can you remember? Yes. So it started off, didn't it? Where there were 2 sides. You had the duckbill dinosaurs and then you had the Tyrannosauruses. Could the Tyrannosauruses go over to the duckbill dinosaurs? No, they couldn't. And why was that? Yeah, because they couldn't swim, could they? And that's why they wanted to build a bridge. But then, what happened? Yeah, the little comp dinosaur snuck one of the duckbill eggs and brought it where? Yeah, to the Tyrannosaurus nest. Well done. And then what happened? Yeah, so the Tyrannosaurus, all the other eggs in the nest hatched, and so did the baby duckbill egg. Did the baby duckbill egg belong there? No, it didn't belong there, did it? Because it came from the other nest. So then it wasn't treated very nicely, did it? Why was that? Well done, because one of the things, it didn't eat meat. It ate plants, didn't it? Well done. It wasn't a meat-eating dinosaur. It was a... Well done. It was a vegetarian dinosaur. It didn't eat meat. No, it didn't. It likes to eat plants. Right, so now that you know that and you know what's happened so far, I would like you to stop this video for a second and try and guess what might happen next. And I want you to think really carefully about what could happen. So we know that the duck-billed dinosaurs just ran away. So where might the duck-billed dinosaur run to? Where might it come into? What might it see? Will it go to other dinosaurs? Will it see any other dinosaurs? Will it get lost? Will it maybe find its way home? Could it maybe get caught again by the Tyrannosauruses? I hope not. So have a think about what you think might happen and then try and draw a picture guessing what it might be. So pause the video now and have a think about what might happen. And then once you've done that, come back. Right, so I'm guessing the reason why you're playing this is because you have now guessed exactly what you think is going to happen next. Shall we find out? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Shall we find out? Yes, I think we should. Right. So we know he's just run away from the Tyrannosaurus. So he ran off to the river where he saw a lovely sight. A herd of duck-billed dinosaurs all hooting with delight. And they hooted up with rivers, and they hooted up with reeds, and they hooted up with bellyfuls of juicy water weeds. As he stood there on the bank, a sudden urge took hold of him, and he jumped into the water and discovered he could swim. And the duckbills came to greet him by the rushy river's edge, and they hooted, nice to see you, and they hooted, have some veg. And Drip, who was delighted that they hadn't run away, ate bellyfuls of water weeds and played with them all day. Then he gazed into the river and he asked them, who is that creature in the water? And they laughed and said, it's you. She's been able to see his reflection in the water. That night, the lightning crackled and a storm blew down a tree. And it fell across the river and the tees cried out, yippee! And they shouted up with hunting, and they shouted up with roar, and they shouted up with bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaur. Drip's sisters stepped onto the bridge, but then began to frown. For there in front of them stood Drip, who yelled, look out! Look down! And they looked into the water, and they each let out a yelp. And one cried, water monsters! And the other one cried, help! Their mother scolded, nonsense! And she joined them on the tree. Then she looked into the water and exclaimed, good gracious me! The three of them stood trembling, and Dad said, get a grip. You're all of you as drippy as Tyrannosaurus Drip. He strode onto the bridge and scoffed, I bet there's nothing there. Then he looked into the water and he jumped into the air. And how the duckbills hooted when he landed with a crash, and the tree bridge broke, and 4 Tyrannosaurs went splash. And spluttering and clinging to the branches of the tree, they went whooshing down a waterfall and all the way to sea. And the duckbills hooted happily. They hooted hip, hip, hip. Hooray for heroic, one and only Duck-Bill Drip. And the end. Put your hand up if you guessed the ending right. Well, I tell you what, I didn't see that coming. That was fantastic. What a lovely story that was about. So our Tyrannosaurus Drip, our duck-billed dinosaur, found his way back to where he belongs. How lovely is that story? I cannot wait to see all of the lovely endings which you all guessed. I bet there's some fantastic pictures that have been drawn because I know you are really good at that. I hope you have a lovely day and do some much, much more hard work as well. Super. See you soon. Bye bye.